Racism, sexism, homophobia, these are not victimless statements. These are not victimless transgressions. It flew in the face of the very representation that we've been fighting for within professional sports. Carl Nassib, the first openly gay active player to be on an NFL roster, is on his team. And it came out that he was against Michael Sam and the league pushing for representation, pushing for diversity, pushing for women to be in significant positions of power and refereeing. He was against the very progress that we all fight for. When ignorance is mixed with power, that is a deadly combination for a lot of people in your wake.
On a deeper level, we're seeing a gradual undoing of inequitable systems in this country. And I think the NCAA is simply the latest. I think that the writing has been on the wall for a number of years. And quite honestly, since I was a student athlete long time ago at San Jose State, and I watched figures like Ed O'Bannon challenge the NCAA and quite honestly, the exploitation of their labor, even on our level as a mid-major institution. I can recall playing alongside my teammates on video games, and then we would walk into our kitchenette and we would eat top ramen noodle. And I think that we realized that the time was coming near for the NCAA to right this wrong.
I would love to see politicians show us your work. I would love to see organization leaders across different industries show us your work. What have you done over the last year?
I absolutely see this continuing. And quite honestly, I believe that it has always been there. But simply because of the stigma that surrounds mental health, we've seen a lot of excuses shrouded in DNPs and load management and other labels that didn't allow for us to truly really know what the true reason for our athletes not performing or not showing up in their respective sports were.
There were many other socioeconomic disadvantages. There were many other inequitable barriers to successfully navigating Silicon Valley that had nothing to do with our skill set.
A lot of what we're seeing manufactured, mainly politically, but also in some of our social institutions as well, are stoking some of our natural fears.
They are dealing with a very sensitive issue that those like myself, it doesn't have to play out on a public stage. The paradox of being in the public eye means that, and I would have loved to see Andrew Wiggins be a little bit more prepared in his presser to be able to take some of the heat off of himself and maybe be able to take back a little bit of his privacy as he plays this out with the organization and also the support of the NBA PA.
We have to see those dollars come back to our communities in a meaningful way. And far too often, we're not seeing them come back. We're seeing press releases. We're seeing them doing it for the gram. We're seeing a number of different performative measures that ultimately we invest in these companies by patronizing them and giving them our dollars, and we never see it back, even though they promise. It's that sliver of society who feels like they actually own what they see out there on the field and what they see out there on the court. They have a deeper issue that, again, is, I believe, tied into what we continue to see in our society of the lack of understanding that we can disagree, that we can have discontent, and it can be done in a civil way that adheres to decorum, to boundaries, to respect of your fellow citizen in this country and abroad, quite honestly. But I think when fans take it a step too far and believe that they actually have the latitude to express their discontent in ways that are outside of the legality of the sport, and then from a social civility standpoint, I think that's where we need to take a step back, and we need to have harsher penalties that have significant consequences that become deterrents, not reactive after the fact.
Sport reflects society. I believe what I see in terms of, I don't see representation in the decision-making rooms. I don't see representation similarly in C-suite decision-making rooms in corporate America. I also see that wealth and power is still very much so distributed in the relative hands of few. And I've also seen the impenetrable hegemonic forces that power continues to put around them to not let those marginalized communities who have been marginalized for centuries, and many of ironically, their wealth was made generations ago on the backs of many of these communities that they are trying to keep out.
Well, I think that's where it starts. It's questioning everything. I learned early on, taught by my parents, to believe very little of what you see and challenge everything. We should challenge the very institution and system that has been educating us. I went most of my life thinking that Christopher Columbus was a hero. I went most of my life believing that the only heroes that I had within the African American community were Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, and perhaps it was limited to George Washington Carver. And it sounds cliche-ish, but peel back this onion, if you will, to see some of the darkness and oppressive institutions within education that has precluded us from fully understanding our history, especially disenfranchised and marginalized communities.
I think therein lies why we saw such a hastening to get this deal done, is that baseball fully understands where they fit. They actually fit number 2 in terms of profitability, sandwiched right in between the NFL and the NBA. However, in popularity, as well as dealing within some of the other metrics that tend to determine if they're going to continue their profitability, they're waning. Baseball largely makes its mint off of regional television deals. And we've seen, outside of last year's pandemic, where the numbers sort of spiked for every league and every television network, we've seen viewer ratings going down, and we've seen the average age of baseball fans go up. That doesn't bode well for the game. So they're going to have to continue to appeal to a younger audience. They're going to have to appeal to a growing generation where attention span is lowering and the need for ongoing excitement and energetic pace of play continues to spike. And baseball has seen that they struggle to appeal to that audience. No longer can it be left to subjectivity. I think that's what continues to get us into trouble, to where the smoke-filled back rooms, to where after things like the Rooney Rule have already been checked off the list, and you go into these private conversations and it becomes a gut feel conversation. And when you start talking about who's a good fit, usually it comes down to subjective measures of, am I familiar with you? Do we have similar backgrounds and upbringings? Can we converse about similar things? I should be hired because I'm qualified and I'm the right person for it. And when we move into those subjective measures, until we do have a more inclusive workforce, typically those who are of historically marginalized and disenfranchised communities will not be the comfort fit for the upper brass in these leagues. So we have to start moving towards more inclusive, more objective measures in order to start seeing some change.